We have made it to the last presentation of the day. So again, thank you for joining us in our second year of doing the NeoCon Talks series. These talks are 20-minute conversations on a range of topics from a variety of speakers from all over the globe. We're going to have 4 more talks tomorrow, so we'd love for you to join us for that. Thank you to our sponsors Formica, 9 to 5 Seating, Dauphine, Garden on the Wall, and Via Seating. Also, there's a Beatrix coffee right behind us, so if you guys need a refuel, you can grab that. And starting again tomorrow, we might get one more in today. In between the talks, we'll be having some workplace trivia with prizes, so feel free to participate in that, and you can get a free coffee from Beatrix. And on to our last talk of day 1. We're going to be hearing about intentional-based working for the future of work with Stephen Smith. Welcome, Stephen.
And it works. Hi, how's it going, y'all? Okay. So first, quick disclaimer, I'm an industrial organizational psychologist, and you're probably wondering what the hell is one of me doing here. First of all, very lucky I know people like Katie, else I would not be. My career started off in HR, doing HR analytics, people analytics, engagement, turnover, that kind of stuff. By happenstance, turned into the real estate world, and I've not looked back since. Y'all can do more with putting up walls than we can do with all the policies and emails in the world, so God bless you for doing what you do. I'm happy to be a part of the team. Today, though, I want to talk to you about intentional-based working, and I'm going to give a little best practices in terms of how do we measure the experience so that we can ultimately have different solutions as we have more and better and richer data. We have a more diverse and dispersed workforce than ever. That's how I want to kind of teach you how to use some basic metrics to help create a more intentional-based working environment. If you look at the screen here, I want to start to show you about analytics. I'm going to talk about 4 types of analytic practices, if you will. And the first one is going to be about tying things to the business. Usually we try to do satisfaction surveys. Maybe we'll loosely tie that to attraction and retention numbers. That's a very big dotted line. I want to give you something more direct. So in this example, I want to understand how people are working. How is the business actually getting done? So each of these little bubbles y'all are seeing represents a unique working activity that's happening within the work environment, right? So maybe that big blue one at the top looks like formal meeting. Maybe that one far right looks like analyzing. Maybe the one at the bottom looks like searching for information, right? Kind of core things. Bigger the bubble, more time is being spent on it. But where these bubbles fall on the grid are completely dependent upon what kind of work is happening. On the right side, it's very complex, nuanced, expert judgment-oriented work. On the left, it's very transactional work. Right? On the top, it's highly collaborative activities, and on the bottom, it's isolated activities. When you start to understand how much work we're doing and how it's getting done, you can start to think about how do I best support that. And I think that's where activity-based working stopped. And now I want to tell you about intentional-based working. And again, the first metric is tying it back to the business. It's great to know how much work y'all are doing, but how valuable is the time spent doing the work that you're doing when it comes to finding success in your own role? Not all work's created equal. I want to focus on the things that are a good use of my people's time. In this example, you can see the big blues. Those are things that everybody says are really important. As I start to creep down to the grays and the yellows and the browns, these are people telling me this does not add value to my job. Matter of factly, this might be standing in the way of me doing something better. So when I'm talking to you about tying things back to the business, what I want to understand is I don't want to just support all the work that's happening today. A lot of the work sucks. And I don't want to keep supporting that bad use of our time and our labor. In this example, real clients, even for them, you see they're spending off the charts time in formal meeting. Their architect did a normal survey, and the survey said not enough meeting room space. So what did the architect do? Said we need twice as much of that. And we're saying, listen, y'all, like you're doing formal meeting off the charts, but everybody from CEO down to the ground floor says it is an absolute waste of time. Why would I go build twice as much room to support that bad use of your labor? So when we think about intentional-based working and starting to tie our activities to the work that's being done, it's not supporting everything we're doing today. It's using space to reinforce a better use of time. In this organization, by the way, that 18% of labor in formal meetings, times $100 comp and ben for their 4,000 employees over the course of a year, that's $27 million worth of labor in formal meetings every year. You sure you want me to build more meeting room space? in this case, we got involved with the CEO. We quickly realized that we have a culture of meeting, and we have an information dissemination problem in this organization. Okay, well, now that we know that, I can unlock and uncover some big business opportunities, use space to reinforce a better use of your labor, which is obviously worth way more than our space by square footage. And now I can offer an additional value point and proposition back to the client, saying it's not about just on time, on budget, and it's not some dotted line to attraction and retention. This is directly tied to performance. I am using space to reinforce a better use of your people's time, energy, and efforts. So that's how we start to think about intentional based working and tying to the business. The second part of that, though, I want to understand now, where are those individual activities best supported? Right? Because right now we're wanting to wonder, and with activity-based working, it was largely saying, hey, people are doing a lot of things, create a lot of space, and let people choose what's best for them. We know in psychology world that the more options somebody has and the more choices they have, objectively, the worse their decisions are made. The more choice, the worse the decisions are made. Choice fatigue is the word. So to just build a bunch of space and call it activity-based working and hope to God people are going to figure out exactly what they need to do and what the best environment for them is, it's laughable and it's irresponsible. That's lazy and intentionless. Instead, I don't care if you're in office 3 days a week, 5 days a week, 2 days a week. What does the office best support and how do we do that, right? So in this organization, let's say, I can't even see my own dang screen. They're doing a lot of analyzing, right? It's third from the top, which means people rated it really important in that business. But as you can tell, in red being better at home, green better in the office, gray is your little hybrid area. For analyzing, there's almost no green there. And what that's telling us is, man, if I'm trying to build a bunch of campuses for a bunch of people to drive in 2 hours to do coding and to be distracted by their work, I've missed the mark. And that's why we're having a lot of pushback from employees. Instead, I want to build a space that does exactly what an office is supposed to do for us. Planning, the coaching, the brainstorming, the sharing. That's what I want my workspace and my work time to be revolved around. If you're an analyst, spend your 2 days coding at home. Keep your Mountain Dew next door, flip-flops on, and just crank and code. I don't need you coming in for that work. But y'all are telling us that it is important to come in for the sharing, the brainstorming, the connecting. So how do we tailor our spaces and our time, space and time now, to really get the most out of the future workforce? And that's what we're going to start to do when it comes to this. Okay, so the first one I mentioned was tying things back to the business. The second thing I want to mention is psychological safety and trade-offs. So it's number 2 and 3. Psychological safety and trade-offs. What do I mean by psychological safety, especially when we're measuring? On a scale of 1 to 5, how much do you like your boss? Is my boss going to see the answers? And if so, 5. Best boss I ever had, right? Like, it's bad data. Like, that's what we're doing, people, when we're asking them these questions. Okay, so let's not ask them questions because people are going to game it. So let's use the environment. Let's use seat sensors. I came from a Fortune 200, and we did a $500 million campus renovation. And we did seat sensors on all the VPs and above's desks to understand office usage. Everybody else is in the bullpen. What we found out after a week is that these millionaires are taking big stacks of books and they're placing them in their chairs when they go to the bathroom, when they go to lunch, or they go to the golf course. They're tricking our sensors. These are millionaires. And why are they doing that? Because they don't trust Big Brother is watching. So again, when I talk about psychological safety and the way we measure humans, it's going to be critical for getting clean information on the back end to operate from. Now, how do you get to psychological safety? First of all, stop asking about, do you like your boss? It's just a bad question. But the second thing is creating trade-offs. You know what I hate about surveys? And that's, by the way, my job, for God's sake. But I hate surveys. They make people go through an exhaustive list of questions, 1 to 100 questions. And you have to answer those 100 questions on a scale of 1 to 5. Well, what item do you focus on? Do you focus on the item with the lowest overall satisfaction or the item with like the highest amount of red, the dissatisfaction, which is exactly where leaders always go? Or is it the one that's furthest away from the benchmark that may or may not apply to us? Or is it the one that's trending up or down? Long story short, what we want to help employees do is say, listen, in this case, and if you can't see, all of these items are typical work construct items. Satisfaction with light, temperature, your desk, freedom, mobility, those kind of things. And we say, hey, employee, all of these things matter in the employee experience, no doubt about it. But pick the 5 that matter most to you, and then tell me how much you like it or don't like it. And that subtle trade-off that we just did helps people now prioritize what matters most, good or bad. And good or bad, I want to do the things that matter the most to the most amount of people. That's going to be your squeaky wheels. That's going to do all those things. In this example, outside of temperature, which is the big red 1, 4 down. Nobody can deal with temperature. You know that better than I do. The second item that has the most amount of red is probably, does this thing have a micro? A little, nope, I don't think it's that cool. The item on the very bottom is storage. A lot of red, a little bit of green. Most leaders would say, if I'm not doing temperature, I'm gonna do storage. And we're saying, that's only 8% of your population. Like, maybe that 8% is a unique team that we can go find and help, but I am not gonna add a square meter of storage to every spot on campus based on that. That's noise in your data set. And us data people have been doing that to you and with you forever. That is bad. This is the tail wagging the dog. So again, if we can start to prioritize with people and help them decide on what matters most, now we're getting somewhere. Now we can start to put some energy and effort behind what we're doing. Okay, the next thing I want to talk about when it comes to creating good metrics and creating psychological safety, at the risk of yelling at myself from earlier, is actually choice, but it's choice architecture. I'm sick of asking everybody the same set of questions. It's easy for me as an analyst because it makes it very easy for me to measure you, but it does not mean that it's right to get the right kind of information from you. If you said something like distraction did matter to you, I think it's the number 2 item or number 3 on there, what the hell does that mean? That's usually when we go back now and do another focus group, which why the hell do we just do this if we're doing a focus group? Or now we go make some guesses, or we pump more white noise into the building. I want to branch you off. You said distractions meant a lot to you. I mean, what does that mean? Is that white noise in that bottom right-hand graph? Do I need to be pumping in things for the acoustics? Or honestly, is it because coworkers are bothering the hell out of me asking if I saw The Bachelorette last night? No, please leave me alone. I need to do my coding kind of thing, that analysis we talked about earlier. So when you start to think about not only prioritizing what matters most to employees, now we can start to dive deeper into the topics only that they care about. If you said distraction, tell me more. You said healthy workplace? I mean, is that like hippy-dippy yoga rooms? Or honestly, is this just some better mobility equipment? Whatever it is, if you told me it mattered to you, I want to follow up and get more information. But if it didn't matter to you and somebody didn't click on an item, keep going right on by. Like, I don't want you weighing in on this because it doesn't matter to you. And again, that's what dirties up every data survey that you and I have ever done up until this point. And I think that's our opportunity. So ultimately, as we start to think about the difference between activity-based working and intentional-based working, it's not just space anymore, it's time, right? Because now we have this 3 days on, 2 days off. What do we do in the office? Is it the same amount of space as before? Now we can start to prioritize the things that matters most. And that's going to happen not only in terms of behavior and how well you're working with others, or satisfaction, what matters most to you. It's also about collaboration. Has anybody heard of a network analysis? Does that mean anything to any of you? A network analysis? A network analysis shows you how people are collaborating across the organization. Who's interacting with who? And once again, I'm going to soapbox it, and Katie gave me the opportunity to do so. Thank you again. Microsoft 365 is trying to track who's emailing who in the organization to find out how do we support who needs to sit next to whom in my stacking and blocking. The problem with that is they're trying to count things as if we're counting the widgets that were being produced, right? It's counting email traffic and flow. And Jan might have a lot of emails coming out to her. And Microsoft 365 would mean, okay, well, that's your powerhouse. Like, let's hub and spokes model Jan's team in the middle and build around them. Little does Microsoft 365 know that Jan is an information terrorist. That woman never gives any kind of information because information's power to her. And for that reason, she's now created a roadblock. And yeah, your analysis would think that that's a lot of volume, but they're missing value. So the last thing I'd like to leave you with today when we're thinking about metrics and what is the formula to better understanding the employee experience, how do we tie this to space? How do we create intentional-based working? We need to combine volume and value. Yeah, those two teams are working together a lot because they have terrible processes that actually don't work, right? Or more often than not, y'all know better than I do, two leaders want to sit next to each other because of whatever. Instead, I want to make sure that we're crowdsourcing this information from the employees that are the future of work, tie it back to business results, and make sure that we're filtering on the topics that matter most to the most amounts of people. Maybe lastly, and Katie, how long do I have? Because I can go for days, by the way. 5? I can do 5. So as we think about, we mentioned trade-offs, we mentioned tying it to the business, we mentioned making sure that our data is psychologically safe, both in terms of the way we're asking questions, but also in terms of the way we're measuring things. Last but not least, I don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. I told you I hate surveys. I do. My software is a survey, so I'm yelling at myself right now. I fully appreciate that. But I don't want to throw the baby out the bathwater. And people will support a bad decision that they were a part of for a lot longer than they'll support a good decision that they were not a part of. So we still want to make sure that we are including everyone and doing something that's very thoughtful, tied to the business, not a checklist of a happiness survey, is A, going to make sure that people get off the bench and they're part of your solution, not part of your problem because you're doing it to them. But it's also making sure that we are, again, tying things to the things that matter most to me and my organization. And that's how I spend my time. How can you remove roadblocks to make sure that I am getting what I need to be successful? And then giving that information back to the people. Maybe the last thing we'll talk about with all of this, and it's going back to that word choice. Right now, what we're finding very popular is starting to be teaming agreements. I'm sure many of you have heard of this. We're starting to have these organizations that say, hey, I don't want to have one mandate. How do we do this? Well, a lot of organizations are moving to team-based mandates where they sign a little contract by themselves and things like that. Love that, by the way. The only thing I would add to that is as we're starting to think about people choosing who they are and, and where they fall, and good, I like the team collaboration, it's creating personas. Like, maybe we have 4 clear personas. We have people, and our data can tell you, there are people who will come in max once time a day. There are people who come in 1 to 2, about 3, and then there are people who are there all the time. Creating personas and allowing people to opt in or opt back out of that persona gives them the freedom and choice to still get the things done that they need to get done, but allow them to be a part of it. And I think that's what's going to be ultimately very critical for us. Although I have about 3 more things to tell you, I'm going to wrap this one up because I feel like I'm in a good spot. Do I have 2 minutes to even ask for a question? Y'all ask questions here? Is this a question place? Does anybody have questions on any of this stuff while I'm still blabbing? Yes, ma'am. Love it. When you're doing surveys, first of all, do you do anonymous or not anonymous so you can filter stuff? First thing is I would try and I would encourage y'all to never use the word survey. I'm sure you all hate the word survey and what surveys mean as much as I do, and it's my damn job. So try to use something else. Assessment, workplace diagnostic, organizational MRI, what we call a digital interview. Try to get the hell away from the word survey because they already box you in and they're already going to box you out. Now, how we believe it's best done is understanding who the people are behind the scenes. The second I ask you who you are on a survey, that's when psychological safety goes out the window. I don't know about you. If any of you have taken a workplace survey, I become a female on the 44th floor very quickly in accounting. I lie immediately because I'm a skeptical jerk. I mean, it's what people are. So we do not want to ask them those questions. And if you have to, because there's no other way around it, make sure you at least ask at the end. So hopefully you got clean answers up front. And then if people drop off at that point, I can't use their demographic data, but at least we have something with clean information. What you would like to do, though, is you would like to tie their email address with their IT and your HR department to their demographics behind the scenes. Because when I send an assessment, it's going to send to a unique email address. That email address will tie back to their HRIS data system. So on the back end, I can start to slice and dice those demographics to understand the age influence, or gender influence, or neurodiversity influence, or all of those topics. So certainly anonymous, it's confidential. Promise people you don't report in groups of under 5. This is team-based, not an individual-based. Again, that freaks people out. And get the hell away from the word survey. Thank you. Any other questions before I go? Yeah, please. Yes, sir.
First of all, I think this is...
We have mics, man. You can do it.
All right. Hi. So I do think this is a very interesting and complicated subject that you brought up. So one of the things that caught my attention right here on factors that matter most to you, you have commuting time, yet we're in a world now where so much is remote work. And I'm wondering how that, and at the same time, we know that employers, because want to get their people back to the office more, because we also know collaboration takes place best in the office. And I'm wondering how those 2 factors, how do you think it's all going to end up? Can you read the future? Because there are the yin and yang thing going on here, where nobody likes to commute, but still a lot of good things happen in the office, and a lot of management wants people back in the office.
Thank you for that. Short answer is I have no freaking clue, and if anybody tells you that, they're lying. I don't listen to people like me or other futurists when they talk about the future. I wouldn't listen to me either. I watch more sci-fi, and that's usually a better idea of what's actually coming than anything I can tell you. What I will tell you is, first of all, not all collaboration is created equal. A lot of it sucks. right? So I want to eliminate the shitty collaboration and focus on the good collaboration. And we're finding, and again, going back to things like mandates. So sometimes my company, this is not a pitch for my company, but as an answer, we do our study at the city level. So we'll rope in 20 or 30 employers in a metro to understand like the full community, so to speak. And what we're finding is that if you get this is a good point. If you get away from the days and instead measure by percentage of time, people want to be in office about 50% of the time. The problem is then we mandate 3 days, regardless of the percentage of time difference. The difference is I might want to come to the office 5 days a week, 50% of the time, but that's every morning. Because honestly, at lunchtime, y'all get tired and pass out on the keyboards. That's when I get home and do my analysis kind of stuff. So to answer the question, I think if we stopped with the mandates, created a little bit more flexibility, made sure that our spaces reinforce what I'm actually coming to the office for, you make me want to come. But if you're making me come to the old equipment with the old ways of working, doing the same stuff that I now know I can do better at home, and you're making me do it for a couple days handcuff, again, I'm a 36-year-old punk. I would absolutely revolt 1,000%, and I'd probably shirk for a while before you fired me, right? Not ideal. So how do we start to create the right metrics to serve, as we call it, we want to create freedom within a framework, right? There's some boundaries that we know as an organization. There's some guide rails and lines that I can't have you cross. But within that framework, we want to give the freedom. If we have the metrics that tie to our business, and it's not just satisfaction surveys, we might have a good shot at getting there in a harmonious way. Thanks for the question, sir. Any other good questions? Even a mediocre question's okay right now if you want it. I'll prefer good ones, but please, yes, ma'am. I'll run over there. Hold on.
If you have a boss that doesn't want you to work from home, but you know you get more done at home, and you like being in the office in the mornings, like you were saying, but in the afternoon you get that slump, how do you advocate for that if you have someone that doesn't seem open to it?
So I'm an industrial organizational psychologist. I am not a therapist, and that's what that leader seems to need. Y'all heard the question, right? How do I get a leader? If I have a leader that doesn't understand that I'm more productive in the office or at home, they don't give me the flexibility because maybe they don't believe it, maybe they're old school. How do you crack that nut? Usually my first answer is find a new boss. Second answer is Dr. Phil's gonna be better than me. But number 3, again, I think it always goes back to tying it to the business. If we have a business case and a leader still disagrees with it, they're probably not going to be a leader too much longer because they're obviously missing the mark. I think it's also a little bit of things in terms of understanding grace. What we're being told is that a lot of leaders are having their leaders make them send you into the office, right? So sometimes their hands are tied as well. The top of the top, right? And I think that's where, certainly our own information that ties to our businesses, but now that things like automation are coming, now that we're having a lot richer data sets, now that we're having some larger community studies, we've all been in a wait and see mentality. Every organization is waiting to see what everybody else does and who's figured it out first. We're right on that edge. Having that business case, looking at some of the studies that are coming out is your best bet. Else, Indeed.com is probably where I would go after that. Any other questions or thoughts, comments about my stupid jacket and the fact that I forgot socks today? I drove in from Iowa. What can you do? Thanks very much for the time, y'all. Appreciate the conversation. Thank you.
Stephen Smith, everybody. Thank you, Stephen. Okay, so again, we're going to have the full recording of Stephen's conversation on workdesign.com. You guys can get a free subscription to our newsletter, and you'll be notified when all of the videos for the talks are live. And that's it for today's lineup. So we look forward to seeing you guys tomorrow for day 2 at NeoCon Talks here, starting at 1:30. You guys enjoy the rest of your day.